Hello everyone. Thank you for having the patience to listen to me talking there. Yeah, I am Benjamin Howarth. I run a small little freelance company called Code Development, team of one, yours truly. Yeah, I got promoted to the core team about 5 weeks ago after having a bit of a crazy rewriting session over Christmas, getting Umbraco working on Medium Trust. Apparently this is going to be like an annual thing, that someone randomly out of nowhere is just going to come along and write some amazing stuff for Umbraco every year, so look forward to next Christmas. Okay, so Medium Trust. Medium Trust sounds horrendously boring. It's medium, it's in the middle, it's not one extreme or the other. But it's actually very, very important for your development process for lots of reasons, but the main ones are that it's safer, and it's faster, and it's cheaper. And I'm going to cover all the different benefits and how they kind of affect you, whether you're running on dedicated servers or shared hosting, or however you're writing your code. So there's a little bit of geek talk, so if you're scared by that kind of stuff, you might want to leave now. Okay, so from the safer perspective, running in Medium Trust on shared hosting particularly means that with Medium Trust you can't actually access any files outside of your website's root folders, and that's a good thing. So I call it a virtual bilateral bubble, so it actually protects your code from damaging other people's sites or the server that you're running on, and vice versa. So people can't damage your code as well. So it's all protected and all nicely self-encapsulated. So, and this in turn actually encourages better coding practices. So instead of doing things where you would normally use like a temp directory to just dump out a text file or something, then you'd you'd find better ways of being able to run it in a much safer environment in your little self-contained bubble. One of the problems I came across when writing my modifications to get Umbraco working on shared hosting was, I apologise, I have no idea, that wasn't expected. One of the problems I came across was running script blocks. When I first kind of went, oh, I've got something that looks like it might be working in a shared hosting environment, I then went to actually try and install the some of the Umbraco modules from the package repository, and the first one I went and got was Mr. Robar's wonderful XSLT search module. And so I went, as one does, through to the developer section and went install, and then went to try and run it. And that was the first thing that hit me, was MS-XML script blocks. Now for those of you that don't know, script blocks, in the XSLT macros that you can create to extend Umbraco to get data out of the system, you can write script, whether that's JScript or C# or .NET, and that it acts as little helpers to be able to retrieve and manipulate the data that you're working with in your XSLT. Now, the problem with using script blocks is that every single time an XSLT file is requested, it compiles not into the normal area where the rest of your website compiles, which you developers will know of the temporary ASP.NET folder. It actually compiles into your system's temp directory on every single request. Now, we've got Alex Norcliffe here, and sites like Vogue and GQ and Wired magazine are running on with lots and lots of macros per page. If you imagine the amount of traffic that's visiting those kind of sites, you're looking at say several 100,000 page views a day. And every single time one of these macros is run, then you're going to end up with a temp file generated in your temp directory. And if you're running on a small operating system hard disk, then that's going to overflow very quickly. Your site's actually going to go down. It's a vulnerability. Not only that, if you're running with several sites on that server, it's not just going to take your site down, it's going to take all of them down. I've worked for one company where they had 200 sites on one server, and their server actually did go down at 5 o'clock on a Friday. That was fun. Really, really fun. So, as a result, it's not the greatest coding practice to have. So, because it potentially creates a lot of headaches. And one of the other things is when you're creating XSLT, is that not necessarily all of your code will actually get checked when you save your XSLT file. So your script code won't get checked for consistency and to make sure that it's safe to run within that environment. So one of the rewrites I made was that we had a little discussion on forums, which Doug got involved in, Neil's got involved in, and we decided that the best way was to try and work with the app.go folder, which is a special little folder inside web projects for ASP.NET websites, which basically you can write C# or VB or any choice of .NET language that you want in there. And then when your site runs, it will get compiled, and it will get compiled to the temporary ASP.NET files. And so you can use all of the .NET mechanisms like caching and security checks. So it acts like proper compiled code at runtime. It acts like a self-encapsulated library. So, strongly defined, which means that you can actually check that all your variables and your methods are actually doing what they're meant to at runtime, which means it's safer from that perspective. You then have the caching mechanisms as mentioned, which means it's faster. It'll take a little while to load up at first, but as all .NET sites do. But then once you've got a caching mechanism in place, the site becomes a lot more responsive rather than having to compile every single time at runtime as you would have with script. And it works in medium trust. Providing that obviously you're not doing things like delete everything from the C drive, then as long as your code is medium trust safe, as long as it's working within the various constraints that your website or your web hosting will place on you in medium trust, then your code will run absolutely fine, and it will run exactly the same as it would within a script block. So, how did we go about doing this? I worked with a framework called ASP.NET Storefront, which is a commercial framework for setting up e-commerce sites. And I got the idea from there, actually, because they allowed you to write helper methods inside your app code, which you could then use in your XSLT, because all of their stuff was XSLT, and that's why I used it, because it was great, it was easy and really simple to template everything and get data out and create custom stuff. So that was handy, and I basically got the idea from that. So I thought, well, I know it can be done, it's just a question of how to do it. So a few pieces of magic, .NET magic were required, and about 50 lines of code in the actual core. So it's a very small part, but it's an extremely useful bit. And that is the magic itself. If anyone actually, I was actually planning on going through this, but if not everybody understands .NET, then you're going to have a show of hands here. How many people here do mostly .NET? Okay, cool, we can go through this. Okay, so basically, it's a pretty simple check. Basically, we have the directory get files, test everything inside the app code, whether there's actually anything there to start with. Because if there's nothing there and you try to compile it, it'll just go, no, sorry, I can't find anything. So we then use assembly.load. Now the interesting thing is this is part of reflection, and this is a reserved keyword inside .NET that will load everything inside this directory, _code. What that does is it will load an assembly based on what are effectively plain text files, .cs, .vb, we now have DLR support, so lol code, Ruby. Everything inside there will actually get compiled at runtime to the .NET framework, providing you've got the right compiler installed on your server. So we then get all the necessary types in there, so these are the namespaces and classes that are declared in your app code. So all exported types. So basically everything that's declared with a public keyword. If we've got anything inside there, lovely. If we've got nothing inside that, then it just logs a system error and continues, and ignores the rest of this. Otherwise, get your type, find an attribute that's on that class. How many of you have worked with attributes on classes? Okay, small show of hands. We'll cover that in just a second. That's, I think, on the next slide.